All right, it's 1:00 on a Wednesday. He literally just woke up because he was writing all night long. What time did you wake up?
No, I was up early this morning because I filled in for Mish on Power Lunch with Lanelli on the Lightning Audio
Oh
Network. So
no! Did you
all good,
pre-record
brother.
that?
Yeah, we recorded it this morning.
Oh my god! I can't believe this guy. I can't
Hey, just
believe
comes
you.
with the territory.
I can't believe you did that, man. You're a guy that you'll be staying up right until 5 in the morning. You wake up at noon, like I'm here.
Yeah, well, I was up to about 4:30, which
There you
was
go.
it's pretty good for me. So
Standard.
on a
Erik
game
Erlendsson,
night, anyway.
you got that right. Erik Erlendsson, lightninginsider.com. You see it right there. Use that promo code JNZ to get $10 off, not just this season, but every recurring season after that. We'll start with the big story of the night. Brayden Point getting scratched for missing a team meeting. This is not something that you usually see from Pointer, Erik, but it's a no-nonsense, zero-sum type of discipline that John Cooper and this coaching staff have. You do something like this, you're not playing.
Yeah, and it's actually the second time it's happened to Brayden. He did
Yeah.
it back in the 18-19 season as well. Valtteri Filppula was also sat out a game for missing a team meeting back in 2017. So it's a team rule. It's been in place since John Cooper has been here. You miss a meeting, you don't play. And I certainly saw a couple of people show up on my mentions last night saying, "What are you doing? Why are you scratching Brayden Point? This is an important game. It's the Bruins. Why not scratch him against Anaheim?" That's not the way it works. You violate that rule, you get disciplined immediately.
Right.
And some people said, "Hey, why not sit him for a period and then he plays the second and third period?" Now that's actually hurts your team worse because you're going to play a forward short for a period. It's just a rule. And look, Brayden has mentioned before, like he's a heavy sleeper.
Yeah.
And look, I don't know if this was the case this time around. I assume it is because this is what happened last time. Sometimes he sleeps through his alarms, and we know how busy the Lightning have been for the past few weeks with the number of games and all the back-to-backs. And I'm guessing he just slept through an alarm and missed a meeting. And that's the price you got to pay. Nobody is above the team. We know that, especially in hockey. And it doesn't matter your role on the team. If you're not going to be there with your teammates, then this is going to happen, and it did.
Any concern about this, kind of leaking forward, or is this just kind of going to be a one-time thing?
No, there's no concern about it. I mean, it's not the first time it's happened with Pointer, but it's not a common thing, right? Certainly we hear about it when it happens. Maybe we don't hear about it if it does happen, but just knowing Cooper and the way that he kind of runs the locker room and the personnel and everything, it won't be an issue. And I think somebody's actually already started a GoFundMe page to set up a bunch of Brayden Point alarm clocks.
I like that. Unfortunately, the team takes a loss last night in Boston. I want to talk about the guy who made his debut last night, in Jack Finley. What'd you think of the young 6'6" centerman there? And he's already been sent down to the AHL, but what'd you think of his cup of coffee there with the Bolts?
Moves well for a guy his size, a 6'6". He's still rusty. Like he missed all the training camp in the first 3 months of the year, coming off of a couple of surgeries, including shoulder surgery. So it's been a long road for him to get back. He didn't even get back to Syracuse's lineup until the week before Christmas. So he's only been back in action for a few weeks. So, for him to kind of step into a game like that against the Bruins and that atmosphere, I mean, even talked about it. He's not used to seeing that many people looking at him, especially he does the rookie lap out there by himself, the tradition. I thought he handled himself well. He's obviously he's got the big size. They threw him out there for a couple of third period faceoffs. Test him, see what he looks like. How does he handle it? Ended up winning 3 of his 5 faceoffs last night. About just under 9 minutes of ice time on 15 shifts. So, if sometimes when a player in his situation comes in and they're quiet, that's not a bad thing. And I thought that in a lot of ways he made some noise, right? Like he had a hit. At one point, it was a little late after the whistle, but he delivered the hit and, made his presence felt. He had a good scoring chance right in front of the net off of a sneaky little pass by Cam Atkinson. At one point, he was out on the ice for Conor Geekie's goal that made it 4-1. So, for his first game, I thought that he established himself well. We'll see if he's back up for tomorrow's game because I don't think they're going to go into this game with 12 forwards. I'm pretty sure they'll call somebody back up, and maybe it'll be him before tomorrow night's game in Anaheim. But overall, not a bad debut for Jack Finley.
Now, why would you, and to some of our people just listening for the first time, why would you send him down and then call him back up?
Salary cap purposes. The way that the salary cap works in the NHL, it's accumulated on a daily basis. So the more money you save early in the season, the more available cap space you're going to have once you get closer to the trade deadline. So, this is one of the big reasons why with JJ Moser's injury, even knowing it was a 6 to 8 to 10 week injury recovery for JJ Moser, it's why they haven't called up another defenseman, because they're trying to accumulate as much cap space as they can, because they're not an LTI this year, long-term injury pool relief. The last few years they've had it with that Brent Seabrook contract that they had. That was Seabrook wasn't officially retired, but he was injured. He wasn't going to play. That put them into a LTI pool. It's not a good place to be, and I don't want to get deep into those weeds because it's very convoluted trying to explain how LTI works. But teams don't look to go into LTI. They want to stay below the salary cap ceiling and accumulate space. So if you save a day's worth of salary cap on Jack Finley, well, that's a little bit more money that you have moving forward. And whether it's Finley or maybe it's even Gonsalves coming back up, whoever it is, I expect that we'll see somebody called up and brought up to the team before tomorrow's game against Anaheim.
So you're saying, like, for what his daily contract would be, let's say it's like, how much would that be?
His rookie deal, I don't know, he's probably making $850. So whatever that percentage is of the whatever days in the NHL season, the best way to describe how the salary cap works is imagine you walk into your door every day, you come home from work and you throw some money into a jar. That you only have so much that you can fill up that jar. And the less you come home with, the more you have to fill that up later in the year. So that's exactly how the cap works. So even saving 1 day's worth of salary cap, whatever it is, whether it's $1,000, whether it's $50,000, whatever that percentage is, and I'm really bad at math, so I'm not going to try and do that. But whatever little bit you save now, you accumulate it. Right, so you accumulate cap space throughout the entire course of the regular season to remain cap compliant. And then if you want to have that extra space for moves at the trade deadline, this is one of the ways that GMs in today's salary cap era are able to do that.
And that's something that Julian really prides himself in, right? This is one of his strengths. So let's say we do get the trade deadline, be here before you know it. What positions do you think that the Lightning will address at the deadline?
I think they need a middle six forward, similar to Anthony Duclair last year. Duclair was more of a top six guy. I think they could use a middle six guy that, preferably maybe a winger that you could play with Anthony Cirelli and Brandon Hagel. I mean, that's been the third guy on that line has been, it's been Conor Geekie, it's been Nick Paul, it's been a bunch of different guys throughout, the course of the first half of the regular season, but they haven't found somebody to stick there continuously, right, to consistently. And I think that Geekie has that potential, but he's still just 20 years old, and he's still finding his way through an NHL schedule and NHL season. He's played well. I thought he responded to being scratched the game before, and then coming back last night and getting the goal. So that's the biggest area I would look at. I think they're quote unquote fourth line. Obviously, Glendening and Girgensons are going to be two of them, and then whether it's Asamoah, whether it's Chafee, no matter who they, put in that situation, I think they're fine with the fourth line. That's why I think they could use somebody that could, kind of move between a second and a third line role, depending on what you kind of need. And then after that, depth defense, is it a right-hand shot? I mean, I'm slightly surprised we haven't seen Max Crozier called up to this point after the way he played in the second half of last year, and the chemistry that he has with Emil Lilleberg. Again, probably for salary cap purposes might be a big reason. I know Crozier did miss some time with an injury in the middle part of Syracuse's season, but he is back. So those are the two areas that if I were in the GM's chair, I'd be looking at to improve with this team.
That's the thing too. Crozier because I just look at Perbix and Radish, and you wonder, like, if Crozier would, move up, one of those guys you could possibly use in a trade, which one of those two guys would more likely be on the move?
That's a good question. They both make about the same money. Their salary cap hits are the same. Radish has more offense to his game. I mean, you had the stat the other night, right? The quickest defenseman in Lightning history to 50 points. which is probably going to surprise me when I
Right.
saw that stat, as well as some of the players, defensemen that they've had come into their team. So I guess it just depends. Perbix is younger, right? He's a couple of years younger than Darren Radish. Plays a different style of game. He's more of a bottom pairing, steady. Can add some offense. He's more of a two-way kind of guy. I guess it would just depend on what other teams are looking for. But if you were to handicap one over the other, I'd say Perbix is probably maybe a tick higher on maybe somebody else's depth chart.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what kind of moves Julian makes, because you have some good talent on this team. Like, where do you see this team as far as where they stack up in the NHL? Because you and I, we both don't just watch the Lightning, we watch these other teams. And man, one move, I mean, you have the top end talent. You have a guy like Victor Hedman, you have Vasilevsky. Like, I truly believe if they hit a home run on one of these moves where they bring in one or two guys and they really settle in, because I think that's one of the things we talk about this team winning back-to-back cups. One of the biggest reasons why was everybody was slotted into the perfect spot. There was never, like, you had guys, we joked about putting it in the blender, but you knew what the lines were, right? You knew who Stammer was playing with. You knew who Point was playing with and Cooch, and you knew what that third line was going to be. You knew the fourth line was going to be Maroon and Belmar and probably like a Ross Colton or a Matthew Jones. Like, there wasn't too much mystery. And I firmly believe that, I know there's been some inconsistency this year, but they're better defensively. And Eric, if they make that one move, that just like that perfect guy, like you said, that could be a middle six guy. Hey, if he wants to moonlight on that first line every once in a while, like we saw with Duclair, we'll take that too. But man, is it just me, or does it feel like this team is really one move away from being like, all right, you guys can be a real contender here?
Maybe two moves, but
Two moves?
maybe the two that I mentioned, because I don't know. I don't feel totally comfortable with Lilleberg and Perbix as a consistent pair. I know they've been together quite a bit, especially since the Moser injury, but I don't know. It just, you look at some of the games and some of the mistakes that have happened. It's been with one of those with that pairing on the ice. So I think they could shore up that area maybe a little bit too. But I mean, you're right in the sense that you look at the Eastern Conference. I mean, tell me who's a dominant team in the Eastern Conference.
Right.
There isn't one, right? There isn't one. New Jersey, really good team, but they've had their stretches where they haven't good. They went out to California and got swept by those three California teams as well, just like the Lightning did. And, the Rangers started off hot and now they're a hot mess, right? Like it's just, there's nobody. I think I even saw.
They're getting better.
I think I even saw a stat that, the winner of the Atlantic Division is on pace to finish with under 100 points.
That's wild to think.
Right? Like, you think about how strong the Atlantic has been. Now, part of that is due to the fact that Detroit is better this year. Ottawa is better this year. Montreal has kind of gotten really good here of late. So those teams are harder. They're harder to get points from. So that kind of brings the pack closer together. So there's not as much separation and gap as there has been in the past number of years, where it's really been the four teams and everybody else. So that's part of that equation. But I think the Eastern Conference is wide open. So I think this year of any year, the trade deadline is going to factor into who comes out of the East. I think whoever finds the best fit, the best deal, once you get to March, that can kind of boost your team, I think they're going to have an edge once you get into the postseason, because there is no team this year that you can sit there and say in the Eastern Conference is by far the favorite to come out.
Do you think that this year, more than others, it's important to get the top seed in the Atlantic? And what do you make of the Lightning's play with their record being so poor as it is in the division?
Yeah, well, they've got some more division games coming up, so we'll get a little bit of a larger sample size there. And once they get out of this stretch of games that they're right in the middle of right now, they're playing 16 games in 29 days. There's a lot of back-to-backs that are in here, including 2 more coming up next week on the road. So once this team gets past that stretch and kind of settles into more of a normal routine a little bit with games kind of basically every other day, we'll get a better feel for what they're capable of doing, because we've seen it. I mean, December, when they didn't have this kind of a schedule, they were really good. Right. And now they haven't been. And look, the schedule is not an excuse. Everybody deals with the schedule. It's not a crutch. I'm not trying to give them a crutch to lean on, but it is reality that, especially with this past few couple of weeks where they've had to chase games because they've been giving up the first goal, you have to expend a lot of energy. Your top guys are playing a little bit more on what is already a condensed schedule this month. So that does definitely factor into things. So look, the Leafs are within striking range. The Lightning still have games in hand on everybody.
Right.
Like even playing the Bruins last night, they still have 4 games in hand on the Bruins. So again, compressed schedule, but an opportunity to make up some ground and put themselves into that equation. I would think that getting first in the Atlantic factors in only because you'll get a wild card team, right? You won't get a Toronto. You won't get a Florida. You probably won't get a Florida or a Toronto, because somebody has to finish first, second, and third in the division. So that means you're going to get a Detroit, an Ottawa team, a Montreal team that, maybe you feel better. Yeah. Like I said, it's wide open. So, right. So I think this year, I think first in the Atlantic might be better than maybe it was in 2019 when Tampa Bay had to face Columbus, which was a very hard-working, bad matchup team for Tampa Bay that year, obviously.
I don't remember what happened that year. I've already burned that out of my brain.
I think a lot of people have kind of forgot about that.
Conor Geekie, you mentioned him, and I brought him up last week, and I brought him up to anybody that would listen, and I want to see more from the kid. And he was a healthy scratch, comes back, scores a goal, which was good. I thought he asserted himself a little bit better last night. Why the healthy scratch? And, what do you think we're going to see from him now that gives you some belief after watching last night's game that he can turn it around a little bit?
Well, first, I don't know how healthy his shoulder is, right? He took that stumble into the end boards on the 22nd against Florida, missed the game on the 23rd. We know what hockey players will go through to make sure they stay on the ice. So he's probably healthy enough to play. Doesn't mean he's necessarily healthy. But having said that, he was a healthy scratch the other night in Pittsburgh. And it's never a bad thing for a 20-year-old in his first year in the NHL, making the jump from junior to the NHL to maybe just get a different perspective on the game.
Right.
Steven Stamkos went through this, right? He sat out a couple of games in January as well, because it's the midpoint of the season. It's the sled dog days, as our good friend Martin Fenley used to call them. In hockey, you kind of get to this point of the season. It's a little bit tougher to get up for games and to have that same type of energy that you had in October and that you're going to need in March and April. So it's never a bad idea to just maybe get a different perspective, go over things, look at things from a different level, talk to the assistant coaches while this is happening, and just get a different perspective. And it's a little bit of a reset, a reset mindset. Is what it kind of does, and gives you a different, because players will tell you that when they're first coming up to the NHL, unless you're an elite player, unless you're Connor Bedard or somebody like that, the game has to slow down for you, because you're going 100 miles an hour trying to keep up with the pace of the NHL. And sometimes that speeds the game up too much for you. You have to slow the game down. And sometimes getting that perspective from above helps slow the game down and realize, okay, I had an extra second here to make a play. I didn't have to rush that. So I'll remember that when I get onto the ice. And look, a second doesn't sound like a lot of time, but it's a lot of time at the rate of speed that you have to think and look at the game from ice level in the NHL. So the way that he responded and, got himself involved a little bit and got to the net. I mean, that's the big thing. He's a big body. He got to that front of the net, was able to get a stick on that shot from Victor Hedman and deflect it past Jeremy Swayman. So those are the things that you look for. How does a player respond to that? And I think he did. Look, he still has to add muscle to his frame. He's a big kid. He's only going to get stronger and bigger over the next couple of years. And by the time he's 23, 24 years old, he's going to be a much different player than he is now. Doesn't help you right now, but I think the way that he responded last night kind of gives you some understanding that he knows why he was scratched. It wasn't a punishment. That's the big thing that you have to look for. It's not a punishment that he was scratched. It's just a reset. Let's give you a second here to kind of catch your breath and just get a different perspective on things.
Double E, the Four Nations face-off is in a couple weeks. Do you think it's a positive that guys like Vasilevsky and Kucherov are not playing because it'll give him some time off when some of the other elite players in the league are going to be playing in a tournament that, maybe on the outside people may think it may not mean a lot, but once those guys hit the ice, I mean, they're not going to be half-assing it.
Oh no, this is full bore. Especially you look at a team like Florida where they have 7 guys that are taking part in the tournament, which is good for them in terms of the type of players that they have. But they certainly are going to be playing extra heavy minutes. So these are going to be highly competitive games in a lot of ways. So yeah, I mean for Vazzy in particular, and for Nikita Kucherov, who plays heavy minutes and everything else, yeah, it can never hurt to be able to kind of get that extra rest that you're not normally going to get, because we know if this was an Olympic year, well, I guess not right now, because Russia is going to be banned from the Olympics as well next year, unless something drastically changes over the next 10 months or so. It's high leverage hockey, and to kind of just take a step away and, I'm sure they'll go to the Caribbean or somewhere where it's nice and warm this time of year and spend some time at the beach and just kind of get away from the mental grind. It's not always the physical, and it is in terms of the bumps and bruises we know guys have, but it's more so the mental grind that players kind of have to go through. And these breaks are more about mental rest than they are physical rest. So it certainly can't hurt that some of their top guys are not going to be participating, and they have the opportunity. Ryan McDonough, who you thought maybe he'd be on Team USA because he has been in the past, and they could use some experience back there, but he's going to get some opportunity to rest in the minutes that he plays. And poor guy took another puck to the face last night and didn't come back. So rest is a weapon, as Guy Boucher used to tell me.
It's funny that McDonough was clearing a puck last night, and Pasternak moved real quick. And I was like, oh, that was so funny. He just didn't want to get hit in the face. And then later on in the game, Pasternak hit him in the face. And knowing that he's such a good guy, definitely didn't do that on purpose. And he was like,
no.
Oh, my God, it was awful. Before I let you go, give us an update on J.J. Moser. I know it was great to see him out there with the team at the end of morning skate, but it'll probably be a little while before we see him back, correct?
Yeah, I remember it was an 8 to 10 week injury, happened in the beginning of December. So the 8 to 10 week range puts you right around the first or second week of February. And what happens the second and third week of February? The league goes into a break. Positive sign to see him out on the ice. Wasn't a full participant out there. Was working primarily with assistant coach Jeff Halpern and kind of going through some things just to test the leg and the mobility and everything, and kind of slowly working his way back. Is there a chance we could see him before the Four Nations face-off? Yeah, there's a chance. I don't expect it though, unless he really kind of works his way back and gets himself ready, because the extra rest in his situation wouldn't be a bad thing, right? Like that would give you an extra 2 weeks to re-strengthen or, whatever it is he's dealing with. I assume it's some sort of a sprain or some sort of a muscle strain in the leg. They just called it a lower body injury. So positive to see him out there. But if anybody thinks that Moser's coming back in the next couple of weeks, I wouldn't expect it.
I am with you. Erik _Erlendsson on Twitter /X. That's a K, not a C. 2 S's after the D. LightningInsider.com. You see it right there. Use that promo code JNC. Get $10 off, not just this season, but every recurring season after that. He joins us every Wednesday here at 1 o'clock on the Recher podcast. Double E, appreciate you, my brother. Go get some rest. Get a nap in for you. And I'll see you tomorrow night at the arena, my friends.
I got soccer this afternoon, so there's no rest for the weary, man.
Oh, my gosh. Good thing the Lightning are off tonight. Appreciate you, brother.
All right, man. Be well.